Welcome to the Cryptozoology Show with your host, the Cryptozoologist. This episode, early accounts of native tribes and a bit of updates and some strange old tales there. We got a lot of early sort of masks and different sorts of things, and a whole pile of native cultures with different names for these creatures that have been around for massive hundreds to, in some cases, thousands of years that they state, right? And so, again, besides all the white man sort of thing, you have to sort of analyze this and wonder why is it that, even from 1,000 years ago and plus way even further than that, these different sort of groups that have no way of running across each other, each one is telling you the same thing and making these masks and this sorts of things to even talk about the creature, and all of them calling him, yeah, the big boss of the forest, or these kinds of names that are very similar right across the sort of board. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling that to insinuate that each one of these cultures all elucidated the same sort of thing is not not very likely here, right? Like, and that sort of thing. So, besides the 10 zillion newspaper reports and things, which actually in this one I didn't sort of, I do mention some stories and things, but I didn't put any newspaper accounts in this particular one, due to that I'm just talking about sort of other sorts of things here. But I could have put in all kinds of native ones that are sort of quite common in old days there, where a lot of times the natives would report one of these, and then some local reporter got the story from them, and that sort of thing, right? And their accounts are astonishingly similar across the board here, and those sorts of things. And like I said, I personally don't believe that they hallucinate these things. You're talking from Russian natives to these ones here. I mean, no matter where you go, they're all telling you the mink, the boss of the forest, the Uwa, like, these sorts of names. Like, I mean, the list is sort of mind-boggling, right? And each one is telling you the same thing, yet none of these native groups could have ran across each other. I mean, you have to wonder, right? Like, I mean, even the most skeptical of people, I mean, how long are you going to keep staying in a fog like this? I mean, it's way more logical again. I mean, we didn't even catch all the gorilla species yet, likely, and a lot of them weren't until sort of a year like 1915, things like that. Like, so this is just not, barely 100 years ago. But you have to remember that each year there's only so many people that go trampsing out in the sort of forest, especially in those days, and there was way less population and way less of the forest being touched. So the only reason that even a fair amount were seen was simply that there was a lot of explorers and people would wander around, and there was more of these sorts of things. But as the forest started draining up, and wars and all these kinds of things, and everybody shooting each other, who knows how many natives didn't report? Like, maybe the guy they were going to be fighting with some kind of white guys of some sort, let's say General Custard or whatever, and this gang is in some caves waiting around for him and this sorts of things. How do you know that sometimes they didn't run across these sorts of dudes and killed them then, even, right? Like, in these times of war and weird sorts of things in the early American West and all this sort of thing, so many of these stories of wild man seen in a cave and all this sort of thing, it could be that these natives didn't sort of like always, like keep these sort of records of ones that they fought with and things, even though there's a fair amount of these stories. It could be there's many more that were lost. That, like, let's say, I don't know, there's a tribe of 20 of Algonquin or something, and they want to fight with somebody else or whatever it is. Now they're hiding out in some caves, and all of a sudden they run across a couple of these dudes. Maybe they shoot them with bow and arrows or whatever, right? Like, that sort of thing. and now all of a sudden they get in this war, and some of these warriors die, right? Well, then the guy can't tell the story anymore that, yeah, that he did this, right, and this sort of thing. So these are things to think about. I mean, the assumption that each time these guys hallucinated this is mind-boggling foolishness, right? And this sort of thing. So I mean, no matter what anybody says, there has to be some reality to these sorts of things, and that for sure, like a lot of them call them their brother or stuff like that, that they're actually like humans. A lot of them believe this, right? So we'll continue on here, but I'll show you a lot of interesting sort of tribes here, and different names of Bigfoot you probably never heard of before. I didn't cover them all remotely, but I just covering some here that are quite interesting. So here, early maps of different tribes showing these creatures. Here, a lost one from the Chehalis Reserve, which I talked about before, of some of them being even kidnapped, and these kinds of things. That teacher that I talked about, Mr. Burns, there, he had taken one of their masks, and it took them 75 years. They found it inside of the local museum there, and after some research and things like that, they were able to find it. So it was returned to these Chehalis tribe there, right? So and locally they call them like Saskets or these kinds of different things. Some of these might have by accident, they could be spelled wrong, and so I apologize. No offense to, like I said, any sort of native groups. In fact, one of the nicest people I've ever met recently, I was out doing my documentary, and twice I ran across this girl. She's a native girl, Rose. I believe she's native anyway. She certainly seems to be, right? Like in the highest probability. And what this lady did for me twice in a row is astonishing if you sort of like are going to believe, typical stereotypes about natives and things like this. And this girl certainly didn't fit these sort of any of these stereotypes that you quite often get. And I mean, I just absolutely, sadly, I was a bit shy and sort of didn't keep talking with her. I should have, but twice she's went way out of her way to sort of assist me in this sorts of things. So, and what she did for me is would convince me fairly well that obviously this lady like myself, we liked each other, right? Sort of a thing like that. So, but sadly, I've been down there ever since quite a few times. I haven't ran across her again. So if I do next time, I'll definitely talk a bit more there. But anyways, the point is that from my experiences of running across quite a few natives and these sorts of things, and them talking about these things, to insinuate that they all hallucinate and are always, half in the bag, or all these kinds of things that people make these statements about. These things are, reality, right? Like, I mean, these people have been seeing the exact same things for thousands of years, quite a few of these cultures, right? So, I mean, you have to keep that as sort of things in mind. Here, this one here, an early tribes mask from 1869 by the Tsimshian tribe. I don't know how to pronounce that one. I'm not familiar with this particular tribe, but they're from northwestern Canada, right? And I mean, you can clearly see. Look at the big wide sort of nose here and the lips across, right? It's sort of very apish looking, sort of, instead of the typical sort of a thing there, right? So, and absolutely a very interesting sort of a one here, and that sort of a thing. And it makes you wonder. I mean, there's so many of these. I'm just covering a small amount here on this show, but it gives you an idea that, I mean, these things. This is like the gorilla was just barely discovered around this point. Okay, so how does these native guys know these things? Like what? Yeah, he's very gorilla-ish like here, right? Like, I mean, again, always the same thing. The boss of the forest, copper nails, all these kinds of things that fully each one's telling you the same sort of thing, right? Like, I mean, come on, seriously. I mean, it can't be all hallucinations here. It's just impossible. Hey, here's another early native mass the American from Native American tribes, and they call it the Bukwas, right? Okay, and sort of thing like this. And I mean, look at this guy. I mean, seriously, the giant nose again, exactly like in the Patterson film. I mean, come on, seriously, like look at the size of the teeth that they're emphasizing and everything. I mean, it's always the same. So again, even the white guys, the silly ones that believe that Bigfoot showed up in the 50s, they don't know anything about these native tribes and that. How is it that even these guys, when random people are giving you these descriptions, why are they telling you the same thing? And why does the Patterson film show this and other ones, right? I mean, come on, seriously, right? Like, I mean, again, this makes no common sense unless they actually really existed. And since we actually already have some physical evidence of these sorts of things, well, I don't see why we keep arguing about this, right? Like, sort of thing. Certainly, the bottom line is that there's small tribes of these sort of Bigfoot-like sort of things. Some of them could be a Gigantopithecus, others are wild humans of some sort that could be ancient native relatives, like they say, they're brothers, sort of thing. But these guys just happen to be more hairy and a bit more primitive, typically, sort of, than a lot of the sort of other groups, right? And that sort of thing like that. And as I mentioned, some of them even speak primitive dialect and these kinds of things, right? So, I mean, this is consistent across the board. It's mind boggling here. Like here from the Mount St. Helens region, right? I mean, the amount of stories from there is mind boggling. Everybody from even the shooting of Bigfoot falling off the canyons to all kinds of things, right? Consistent, massive, hundreds of years of reports here of these sorts of things, right? Like, I mean, and it's always the same, this wild manish sorts of things, right? So, absolutely fascinating. Like Mount St. Helens, I mean, that's a wild sort of place, boy. A lot of wild stories from that sort of one, right? And that over the ages, right? And that sort of thing. And with this catastrophe in recent years, even showing scientists that what they believe would take millions of years could actually take days to do the exact same thing. Right. So I mean, it's a great place, this Mount St. Helens. It's even useful for proving that that this is just the theory, because here, right in front of your face, the exact same layering and everything else that you claim takes millions of years to do occurred overnight, right? Sort of thing like that. So very interesting. Right. So, but you got to wonder, like, I mean, quite consistently, these American tribes and Canadian ones all over the place, right? And we're going to have all kinds of them here. Here's the Tingit, okay, from the Tlingit sort of tribe here, mid 1800s. I mean, look at this. Look again, the giant wide nose. He sort of comes across like this. Now, some person's claiming this is a wolf mask or something. Another idiot claimed that it was a shaman, and that I really disagree with this completely. I mean, this is normal, sort of like many of the other masks here. Look at the top part of the mask there, where you can see the rounded face and the giant wide nose and the big lips there. Exactly the same as what they're showing, but a couple of people have tried to identify it by trying to give it some other silly sort of thing, saying it's a wolf man or these kinds of things. As far as I'm concerned, this is definitely a Zunaqua like sort of creature of some sort that they're depicting there, sort of thing. Here's another one from. I'm not sure this culture, which one this one came from, but very similar. This giant lips and the giant nose and the great big eyes and that sort of thing, and the funny cranium up on the top of his head and that sort of one. This one, all I know is it's older, but I'm not sure exactly what tribe had done that one. But I mean, absolutely fascinating sort of ones here. And I mean, it makes you wonder again. I mean, there's so many of accounts of these, it's mind-boggling, and they're all telling you the same sorts of things here. Like here's just we're going to go on with some of these sort of groups here, like the Ahulahak, the Yupik natives. Okay, the Atacama natives, okay? The Atasaya, the Zuni natives, okay? New Mexico, At-Hahila, some of these are hard to pronounce. Numerous tribes, Chinook and Pacific Northwest. The BG was Asala natives. I think a piece of that, the guy's name was Bigwa or something like. A part of it's missing there, but that's this Haisala natives. Sort of, that's what they call him. I'm just putting in these random Bigfoot pictures just to amuse people. That I mean, this one's extremely strange. I don't know what to think of this one. I'll leave it on the fence. It's too weird for me to. If it's a suit, it's a real strange one. But then again, it's kind of oddly suitish in some ways too. So I mean, I just don't know what to sort of think of that one. So I'll just leave it alone. But it's interesting anyway. Yeah, you know. Here are another one. They call it the Box Bellicula natives here. A sort of thing. The Buckwas, Kwakwaka natives, Kwakwaka Aka natives. Another one is seemingly has sort of been removed here somehow. So I apologize about that. The Chino Micmac tribe. Okay, yeah, and like I told you, that lady that I knew there, she saw one of these, and she came from that Micmac tribe. That's not the name she called it. There's some other ones that Micmacs call it, and I believe it's one of these other ones coming up. It sounds more familiar to me that I heard it somewhere before, and I think that's what she might have called it, and that sort of thing. But very interesting. Here's a very early. This one was supposed to be from Russia and something, and you can actually see this guy's wide nose and strange face here. I mean, that's pretty weird for a 1950s sort of photograph here. And you can actually see muscular like sorts of things in it, but this guy happens to have a little bit less of a furry face than some of them do, that sort of thing. But then again, a lot of them have this sort of a bit lighter in the face and that sort of thing. So I find this one interesting because I extremely doubt. I know it's an older photo. I've seen it many moons ago, so it's been around for quite a while. And the odds of some guy in those eras walking around and designed a suit that well is not probable to me, like very good, right? So I would actually take this as a possible. One guy claimed it was some kind of hunter, but I really doubt this. I mean, even if the guy put on some kind of shaggy suit of some sort, his muscles and everything seem fairly defined in here. You can see the shoulder muscles and the different things, and it seems too good for me to be from that era. So I'm not sure exactly the first time I ever saw this thing, but I know it was quite a long time ago. So I kind of doubt it was created by an internet like thing of any sort. So but just another interesting side one here. That I love this name, the Chickley Cuddly of the Cherokee natives. Right? So one of my favorite anglers of all times, they're Mr. Jimmy Houston. We're both spinnerbait lunatics and that sort of thing, and his wife, which is even more impressive. I mean, the lady won seven times Bassin-Gal champion, like the sort of like a Roland Martin like sort of thing, right? Same kind of thing, but for the females version. I mean, seven times. I mean, obviously you're an astonishing angler, and I believe their daughter Sherry, she's sort of. She's Cherokee as well, and that sort of thing. And who knows? Maybe she knows about Bigfoot too, but she contacted us. You never know. But I mean, the point is that these natives, besides thunderbirds and other things that they report, I believe these to be sort of authentic sort of things, right? And I mean, they can't be all just hallucinating these sorts of things, right? Like the Chitinaka Lukata natives, and the Lukata natives are well known for their healing sorts of herbs and sort of things like that. You can actually get these sort of herbs that are made from them from these Lakota natives, right? The Genu, I believe you pronounce this. I'm not sure. A Micmac tribe again. I don't still think that that was the one. I think there's another one here. Geonosagwa, Iroquois, and Seneca tribe. Okay. And now here's what I've ever seen like in the 1970s. This is extremely like what I saw, except that the guy had, or girl, whatever it was, had more of a gray rump there, like as if some fur was missing, or that the hair was more gray in this sort of area. But besides that, I would say that this is almost near an identical sort of size, like, and what I saw, like in the head shape and the shoulders and the arms and these kinds of things. So it reminded me sort of a lot like that sort of thing. But I mean, I've met some Cherokee natives in the past, and that sort of thing. Sadly, the Houstons there, of course, Jimmy's getting a bit up there too. I think he'd be around 80 or so. So, you know, and his wife, heard, isn't doing, Chris, isn't doing well, right, you know, sort of thing, which is really sad. I would have loved to meet these two and maybe mooch a spinnerbait, a care package. I'm sure they got all the kinds of things that I would require most of the time, sort of thing. But all kidding aside, you know, I highly sort of respect sort of these native cultures, and I mean, we're all like to fish and all these kinds of things, right? So, yeah, you know, even though I'm a cracker boy, sort of thing, I kind of think more like native sort of things. I don't really care about the big millions or any of these sorts of things, right? I care about our environment and do like how the natives did it, where they'd call only a certain amount. They used all the sorts of products of it, and they didn't leave waste around in their environment. You don't see any natives going around and leaving plastic leaping around all over the place, right? And these kinds of things, right? So, I mean, these things, this is a silly white man sort of thing, right? Because of our greed and these sorts of things. But, I mean, to call them sort of, you know, primitive and all this sort of thing, is us who's primitive. Within less than a few hundred years, we've completely polluted our universe to the point of, because of modern man's inventions and these sorts of things. And we're totally reliant on a handful of billionaires to get our soup to everything else, right? Well, you know, sort of thing. So while these cultures lasted for many of them thousands of years now, by doing it the old sort of fashioned way, right? So I don't know who's more primitive, right? Sort of thing like that. But and I mean, you know, the Chickley Cuddly there. I don't know. Maybe if she got a good silk in there and got rid of some of the fuzz, I'd give a Sasquatch lady a hug. But otherwise, if she's too furry, there it might be I might try and run. But all kidding aside, though, seriously, like it's fascinating to me, these massive amounts of cultures that couldn't have known each other, and they're all telling you the exact same sort of thing, right? I mean, it's mind-boggling, right? Like here at the Getkin, Alaskan Lake Iliamana tribe. The Lake Iliamana monster, as I went on and other sorts of shows there, I interviewed some people that actually saw the sort of thing, and this. And these tribes around there, again, Alaska has a lot of sort of sightings as well, right? And this crosses right over again into sort of Russia and all these places, and you know, they can all attach here. And it's interesting that they're all telling you the same sort of wild man sort of guy, right? And like I said, that you know, Dilatla Pass there is, I will believe to the ends of the earth that that was a wild man mink slash Alma, whatever group of giant monster native guy it was, or ape man, whatever they are at the end of the day, right? And sort of thing. I'm 100% convinced that that's what killed those people. Right? I mean, like some of them didn't die because of the creature directly, but they did indirectly by having to hide and run away and all these sorts of things, right? And that sort of thing. Like as you can see here, this native Bigfootish sort of thing, and he's carrying off some young lady here, sort of thing, which is pretty terrifying. But many of these stories, right, and this sort of thing, the Go Get Haida Natives, Alaska, another one, the Go-Go Micmac tribe. That's the one she said, Goo or Gogao or something. It was some kind of name like that. I'm pretty sure this is the one. The Go-Go, where she said it a different sort of way, but I believe this might have been the one that she sort of was talking about. The Iktomi American Plains tribes, right? So yeah, another sort of interesting one here, sort of thing where there's so many of these, it's mind-boggling, and I mean, to all call them hallucination, and they each time tell you the same sort of thing, right? Like I mean, it's mind-boggling. The Messing Lenape natives Delaware. Okay, so the Mitapi, the Kawawusa natives California, the Nunamik Paiute natives, and the Paiute natives are also the same ones that tell you the Sarah Winnemucca and that sort of things. She tells you about these giant cave people that would come down and rape and eat them and that sort of thing, and now they're proven to be actual real. They found the skeletons in the cave exactly as she said, and that sort of thing like that. So again, why anybody disputes Bigfoot, you already have proof that a Bigfoot-like creature exists. It's already sitting in museums, right? Sort of thing like that. The Nukluk, American Northwest tribes here. This is a fascinating photo. I don't know where this comes from or whatever, but I mean, I really have a hard time believing that's a guy in a suit. So I mean, I don't know its origin, right? But I've seen it blasted on several sorts of sites now, and each one claims that they got it on their camera or something, but none of these seem to be like the actual authentic origin of this picture. So I have no idea where it actually comes from. But wherever it is, either somebody took some gorilla and messed with it, CGI sort of thing or whatever, or did some weird stuff here. But whatever the case, that's very unlikely a guy in a suit. So anyways, that's all I can say. That's a bit too good to be somebody in a suit. So, but it could be some other strange sort of thing. I really don't know its origin enough to sort of make a comment one way or the other, but it's certainly more convincing looking than a lot of them. Sort of thing here. Here's another one, the Tenetico, the Casca Natives, Canada. Okay, Zuniquas, I've talked before, and we actually have Jean-Guy's, what is ex there, who might be a Zuniqua on one of the other shows there, and her insane beau, Big Abdul from Quebec City. If you haven't heard those, he does say one little swearish word a few times or something, but I mean, this word's been heard by every human being in the planet, so it's not like as if it's an uncommon word, sort of thing. But we wanted to leave it in its full entirety, sort of thing. So he does say one little sort of naughty word there, but I mean, and he sounds fairly insane, but but nevertheless. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Sort of thing like that. The Uruli Eskimo natives. I don't believe they like being called Eskimo anymore. They used to call them that when I was a kid. My mother used to teach Eskimo natives. I actually still have real carvings. They love my mother so much that they actually made these sort of carvings made out of whale bone and walrus tusks and different ones of cod and different sort of things, and I still have a few of them. Sort of thing, and they actually gave her this as gifts for helping them out and that sorts of things like that, right? So I have pictures. I should have put that in there. I have pictures of some of the kids she taught and these sorts of things, right? And she collected all kinds of weird stories for me when she'd be doing these sorts of things all across as well, right? So she wasn't as big of a sort of, she was more interested in sort of religious, like sort of exploration of ancient sorts of things. But I mean, she certainly had also sort of would like to collect these stories from them, and she was able to collect me different sorts of things as well, right? And that sort of thing. But the Wendigo, and as I mentioned, there was an Asian guy that was on a sort of a Greyhound bus that believed he was a Wendigo and started eating some guy's head off, sort of thing, right? So, this guy's actually loose walking around. This is psychiatrist of today. That's terrifying to me. I mean, so every time I wouldn't get on a Greyhound, so it makes my nerves a bit bad, especially if I see somebody like that that might match this guy's description. You'd see me leaping out of that really bad because being eaten by some Wendigo dude isn't something on the top of my list here. but seriously though, they in this particular Algonquin tribe, they sort of give him more spirit, like he's an evil demon monster of some sort of thing. He's a bit more spiritual, ghostly, like than a typical sort of Bigfoot. But I mean, still he fits in with the Bigfoot description in the general sense, except that they give him more sort of a spirit-like sort of things to it. But another sort of fascinating. Well, this one's claimed to be some Bigfoot, but to me that looks like a manipulated sort of thing. I highly doubt that that's a real Bigfoot sort of thing. But anyways, I just putting some of these in for fun, just to give you an idea of the different ones out here. Here's interesting tales from some natives there. I could have went on about a bunch of them here, but I just wanted to cover a few here. There's this interesting story about this crazy sort of crazy bear. James C. Wyatt in 1888, he mentions about a giant hairy wild man that the natives would feed meat to and thought he came from the stars in the Humboldt region in California. So not too far off from, interestingly, the Patterson sort of gang and all these sorts of things, right? And they would actually, this guy actually seen him, and these natives would come and bring him sort of meat and do like a sort of thing and feed this guy, and they believed that he was from the stars originally, sort of thing, right? Like, I mean, absolutely fascinating. Like, I mean, this guy clearly describes this giant covered full of fur. The guy's living in a cave, and the natives are doing this sort of trade with him, like giving him things, right? And this sort of thing. And you constantly see this in the earliest times, that some of them seem to have some kind of interaction with them and these sorts of things, right? So, I mean, it really makes you wonder. I mean, holy Bazzoli is like, I mean, that's very strange, right? Like, I mean, it makes you wonder, right? Like, I mean, the consistency of these things is just mind-boggling, right? Like, I mean, it's always the same sorts of things here. Like, I mean, constantly, right? And and always the same sorts of interesting sorts of ones here with these sorts of so many tribes and so many sorts of ones here doing this. I mean, it makes you wonder, like, what's really going on here, right? Like, in this sort of thing like that. But and and the consistency again is like astonishing. It's always the same, right? Doesn't matter what the sort of group is. They're all telling you the same sort of thing. Either the guy is shy and they hide from you and will just take off and that sort of thing like that, or that they occasionally grab and sort of grab you and these sorts of things, or that they sort of or sort of doing some kinds of things, like some kind of odd trade sometimes, like I mentioned, the guy there where he's the Bigfoot took his ducks and then gives them back one. I mean, these things are really weird, right? And it's sort of things like that. So, but I mean, very interesting and that sort of thing. Like, so it makes you wonder. I mean, there's so many of these. It's mind-boggling, right? Like here, early account of an Algonquin native. He was spearing fish and he tells of a giant man beast grabbing his fish in a basket and then screaming and running off in the forest in the mid 1800s near Lake Michigan, right? And again, these cultures all have these masks are all over the place. You notice how each time the guy has a Titanic nose much wider than sort of normal hair, and these great big sorts of lips and these kinds of things, right? So, I mean, absolutely a fascinating sort of thing, and really makes you wonder. I mean, mind-boggling, right? Like, I mean, how is this that each time they always tell you the same sort of thing? They're the same size, they're the same, everything about them. They're always, deep in the forest or in the caves and this sort of thing. Like I said, I fully believe that almost like any human being, yes, humans live out in the forest too, but they may have some kind of little cave-like area around there that each time that the guy scouted out his thing, he's got his sort of areas that he hunts and these kinds of things, or some of them are nomads that are sort of explorer like, and they may travel through different states and go running around at night and these kinds of things in the quiet zones and times and be able to sort of do this, right? So you might see like in two states, you get a Bigfoot report a month before. Maybe it really was the same guy. Now he's moving. Like I suspect there's some like that too, just like human beings. I mean, some like to travel, some don't, right? So I mean, if I was in an area that's, let's say I got 20 lakes nearby, I got a river, I got a great big juicy cave system there with all kinds of hidden exits and entrances, and I got wild berries and all kinds of different game and things that I could eat off of a year round. Why the hell would I leave such a hot spot, right? And especially if I have some ladies next door that are living in a cave too. I mean, I got all the action that I require here, right? But I mean, if you're sort of a little small group of yous and there isn't too many ladies left or these kinds of things, and one of your cousins has the only girlfriend left in the village or whatever, like in your cave system, well, then you might sort of meander off looking for one, right? And this sorts of things. So this is what I'm saying. There's it's too consistently across the board, always the same sorts of things, and it makes you really sort of a wonder there. So that, and then next year we'll go on a little bit about the side note of it, the consistency again of these werewolf-like reports, where the same thing in this case is the guy's got the claws and all these sorts of things, but it's identical to what we're seeing. And the French and everybody other sort of groups out there, the mind-boggling amount of these werewolf-like sort of things where, again, they could be some kind of Bigfootish sort of things where they have anomalies like strange sort of faces and things like that that makes them look a little bit more doggish, and maybe some of them are half sort of crazy or whatever, or that it's feasible that there's some kind of giant unknown sort of bipedal, sort of wolf-like creature that actually exists. Whatever the case, we'll just cover some early native names of that sort of next for a little bit, and then we'll go on to another show. And we'll cover some more interesting sort of things. But I just wanted to say, like, I mean, seriously, there's so many of these, and just to give you a basic idea of like the amount of these is mind-boggling. Like it's very strange, right? So, anyways, we'll stay tuned. We'll continue on there and do a little bit more of these sort of other sort of ones, werewolfish like ones, and so the other strange sort of other beasts that could be sort of Bigfootish that might be the same sort of thing, but they give them strange sort of different sort of powers to them and whatever, right? Like that sort of like they make them a bit more sort of odd and mythical, like in some of the sort of cases, right? But I mean, again, the amount of cave systems and with cave art and all of them telling you the same sort of thing from New Mexico to Alaska. I mean, it's mind-boggling, right? That it could be all just imagination, right? And these sorts of things like that. And considering how many giant skeleton bodies have been found, that people just keep thinking they were giant humans, you're not realizing that it's really the same thing here. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter if the guy's half human or whatever, right? Like any kind of combination, it still makes a Bigfoot sighting, right? And so this is what I'm saying, right? Like, I mean, seriously, it's too much of this sort of thing to be all sort of coincidence and these kinds of things like that. That each time, like I said, like the scientist, that guy proved his theory is true, that yes, when people make fibs, when they tell the original story, by the time it gets around, it's spread different. But this doesn't occur as much in real sort of cases where the person's vigilant and he sees something. Like if you ask 5,000 people that have seen a elephant on TV before, I guarantee you a vast majority of them would likely, after they've seen them a few times and know a little bit about them, that they're going to describe the creature fairly similar, right? It's not too often that the guy's going to get hallucinating unless he never saw one before, sort of thing, where now it's got two heads and 18 horns and all these kinds of things, right? But if they're real sorts of things that the people are seeing, they will say very similar like things, right? Because it's not imagination now. Now they're actually remembering from what they saw in their mind with their sort of whatever abilities they have of recollection and this sort of thing. I mean, some aren't going to be as good at it as others. Maybe some are terrified and forget some of the parts or whatever. But I mean, they're all sort of, this is different. It's now different because they're all telling you almost near identical sizes. Everything's the sort of thing. So this is not what this guy was trying to claim with his theory here. Is actually proves more likely they're real, not what he was trying to do, right? So, like I said, this guy didn't think himself out very well. And to me, I'd be embarrassed to have said that, because, I mean, it actually proves more the other way than, but that's not what he was trying to do, right? So, but anyways, we'll go on with these next, so stay tuned. So, folks, here, tales from the natives. Here's some interesting ones here from the Mohawk, Canada, the Limerican, the Navajo natives, the Naladushi, Lushi. Some of these are hard to pronounce. Algonquin Iroquois natives and the French. Great Lakes region, Ottawa River region, loup de garu like sightings. Some of them I'm not sure exactly what their name is of the sort of thing, but they all have this same sort of one. And there was so many reports, like I said, in my region through the 1700s and these different ones. They used to see them a lot over at Rockland Park. We had the werewolf man of the Parliament buildings that may be related to the Halal monster. Or according to Jean Guy, he says I'm saying it wrong. He says that the English is bad for this, and we're saying it wrong. It's the Alolness monster. The Alolness monster. so it's the Alolness monster, not the Alolness monster. So maybe this creature has nothing to do with the lol at all. But all kidding aside, according to John Gee, that I'm saying this incorrectly, he constantly tells me that. So. But all kidding aside, though, it's interesting, these sort of accounts here. And I mean, there was ones where early explorers from trappers to Hudson Bay like Company and different ones, where these guys actually seen groups of these werewolves even attacking and killing people and barbecuing them and stuff, right? Like, so, and howling and sitting around in fires and all kinds of weird sorts of things there. This and there was a one from Alaska that I wasn't able to find, but they clearly indicate way before the French were ever there or any of these sorts of things that this is a sort of Bigfoot wolf-like man that walks on two legs, and he walks around and he eats people and kills them and that sort of thing, right? So, I mean, there's these bizarre sort of native accounts around that sure makes you sort of wonder. Here's, as I was showing you there, the sort of this bizarre sort of ones that I had taken photographs of. Now, I don't know if you can see here on the left hand side. There's one of these sort of probes. There's one on that right hand side. There's two above that are lighter silver colored because they're out in the light. And then there's one down here below. So it's like a triangle. And I mean, you can clearly see them on there. I'm surprised I haven't got more sort of interest in this because, I mean, I guarantee you, I challenge anybody to sort of try and do your CGI thing and claim it was that I put them on there or manipulated this of any sort. You're dreaming because I don't even know how to do this. One thing, but B, all I can tell you is that I watched a storm. I saw strange sort of flickering things where it seemed like some beam was coming out of them, and it was creating this titanic sort of tornado like a storm. And you can clearly see that these objects are identical. Each one is exactly some kind of like little probe like things. So, I mean, these things make you wonder, right? Like, so, I mean, it's just in the other one I had put in where I showed the arrows, but by accident, one of them I put the arrow in the wrong sort of place on it. So, but I mean, if you look here, you can see three dark sort of probe-like objects, like I've shown you, where there's all kinds of films of them and these kinds of things. And there's three of them here. There's two above that seem to be like lighter sort of colored, but that's because probably they weren't in these clouds. And I mean, it's very mysterious to me still to this date. Like, so even though I didn't see them right away until after the sort of camera that I was able to see in it and notice these, I did see something, little flicky things that would have been probably them around the same sort of area, and they look like they created the storm. So it still drives me sort of like, what is that scary to me? That I mean, that somebody has technology out there like that, and what's really going on, right? So besides Bigfoot, loup, garu, and other sort of things, of course, the natives will also tell you about the sky beings, right, and this sort of thing. So they also, along with us, seem to hallucinate these things, according to these skeptics, right? But again, this is an hallucination. Again, I challenge any sort of UFO expert to sort of claim that I, manipulated this of any sort and that sort of thing. And yeah, what more can I say, right? Like, so all I know is I didn't really see them when I first was doing this, but you can clearly see these ones here, these dark sort of, they're all identical shape, 100%. And they were floating and flying. So how does a little metal disc fly up in the sky like that? Like, I mean, and that sort of thing, right? They weren't the sort of drones or any of these kinds of things, right? So what is this, right? So absolutely fascinating. But anyways, just another sort of mystery to me. But if you haven't seen that on my UFO shows, I just wanted to mention that I mean, I've ran across this kind of thing a few times in my life here now of strange things that I have no explanation for, and I just find it sort of mind-boggling. But anyway, so if you have any sightings there, it's cryptozoology sightings at protonmail.com. We'll go on with some more. Hopefully, we can get the Muskrat Lake Monster on there and some other sort of things, and some more Sasquatch traditions and some other new shows coming up. So, thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed it. Bye for now.